Good. All right. So good afternoon and welcome to the UNWLA Book Club. And thank you for spending this Saturday afternoon with us. This month we're reading Core Ukraine, an anthology of LGBTQI plus Ukrainian voices during wartime. So as always, our goal isn't to analyze every page of this book, but be curious, have open and respectful conversation, listen to different perspectives, since all of us approach this book with different backgrounds and different experiences. As you have noticed, I'm not alone here today. Next to me is my good friend and our guest today, Dr. Andrew Rimby, a literary scholar who specializes in queer 19th century American and British literature and is a part-time professor at three New Jersey universities, Seton Hall, Keene, and Montclair. He also hosts the arts and culture podcast, The Ivory Tower Boiler Room, which has been listened to and watched by more than 700,000 people. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really
Yes,
eager
yes,
and happy to be here.
we're happy. We're thrilled and
Yeah,
happy to have you. So we all
yeah,
probably
exactly.
know that June is Pride Month all over the world, and we thought that this would be a perfect opportunity to introduce a book that deals with pride. And this is a book that probably, or maybe not probably, most people would not pick up just to read, but we try to tailor the selections that we make to some either historical or cultural kind of phenomenon or dates. So this being Pride Month, we thought this is a good opportunity to take a look at this short, but I would say very rich volume, Queer Ukraine. So, one of the things that I appreciated about this anthology was that it was very diverse. It's a kind of ran the gamut from experimental poetry to a rather thorough, almost academic research paper on the history of gender kind of identification in the territory that is now Ukraine, stemming from early Greek colonization of the southern regions of Ukraine and ending with today. So I and the book doesn't pass judgment. The book doesn't make any sort of claims or accusations. It just presents us with different voices, and that's one of the nice things about literature. It's one of the greatest things about literature. It doesn't. Good writers don't write to convince; they write to create and to introduce their worlds to us. And I think that this short anthology has given us an opportunity to look at what it is to be gay, queer. We'll talk about this terminology a little bit later in the show. What it feels like to be that, but also to be Ukrainian. So, without further ado, let's just delve into it a bit further, Anya.
Yes, but before we proceed with the discussion, I'd like to start with some historical backgrounds. Queer people were largely erased from the public life in the Soviet Ukraine, cast as alien to the Soviet system, right? And there existed an article of the Criminal Code 121, which in Russian is called мужеложство, that made sex between two men punishable by up to 5 years in prison. There was no equivalent law targeting women, but women were erased in some other ways. While the law didn't criminalize women directly, sexual relationships between women were oftentimes pathologized and punishable with psychiatric detention. So, to deviate from the state's rigid gender and family norms was to invite humiliation, surveillance, and exclusion in your lives. And a lot of times, anti-gay laws were used to prosecute writers or artists that were seen as suspicious, by the communist leadership. And sometimes, even if there were no formal reasons to imprison those people, accusing them of homosexuality was used to silence those people who were treated and perceived as creative and like creative and who were thinking differently. And that happens to one of the renowned Ukrainian cinematographers, Serhiy Parajanov. He was imprisoned for 5 years under this article. But then it became widely understood that that was an excuse to censor him. When Ukraine became independent in 1991, it abolished this Article 121. And Ukraine was the first former Soviet republic to do so.
First, LGBTQ organizations appeared in the late 1990s, often operating under the umbrella of HIV prevention programs and projects. But public hostility remained. In 2012, lawmakers from every major political party introduced a bill to ban so-called homosexual propaganda, closely following in the footsteps of similar legislation in Russia. Russia's invasion transformed queer life in Ukraine once again. The war brought new visibility to the community, to the soldiers and volunteers who were gay, many of whom had previously felt that they had to hide their identities. The full-scale invasion in 2022 also gave new urgency to fight for legal recognition. Civil partnership bills that had long stalled in parliament suddenly became tied to real people's lives. Today, if a gay soldier is killed, their partner may have no legal right to compensation, inheritance, or even to be informed where their loved one is buried. At the same time, public opinion has been shifting. Polls show that growing acceptance among people, especially amongst younger Ukrainians. Even so, many conservative politicians and religious leaders continue to oppose expanding LGBTQ rights. But let's get back to the book. Unlike a novel, this anthology brings together many different voices, and I think that multitude of perspectives makes it very rich and nuanced and powerful. So, Andrew, did you enjoy reading this anthology? And before we start, I'd like to ask you to clarify certain just terminology. And This book is entitled Queer. Up until not too long ago, queer was not an acceptable word. It was considered pejorative, insulting, derogatory, and so forth and so on. Now it's being embraced. So I kind of read about it. I found a very extensive article about terminology of all places on the Oprah magazine website. But I'd like to hear from you. What is the difference between gay and queer, and is queer now an official and acceptable term, or is it just for the cool people?
Cool people. Oh, no, but no, I love this question. I think that, okay, in an academic context, which I could speak
Mm-hmm.
to, queer really comes from the 90s.
Yeah.
Like you've even explained about the Ukrainian organizations with the LGBTQ community. Similarly, in the 90s, queer starts to appear in academic context with queer studies. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like theorists. Judith Butler is one of them. There's a book called Gender Trouble, which if you're interested, that's the book I would recommend. Um, there's a book called Greek Greek homosexuality, that's the book. Um, and David Halperin is another queer theorist. So a lot of these theorists start to use the term to just mean anything that is quote unquote unnatural and like make that a statement of reclaiming the word and reclaiming the word as not a pejorative, not a negative, not something to dehumanize.
But
Um,
it's something almost like empowering, yeah?
Empowering, yes. So
Yeah.
very similar to how some racial groups might reclaim a term that was used to um, as a slur against them. So that's queer is really now an umbrella of just anything under the under the LGBT banner, so to speak. Where gay is more like I would identify myself as gay. It's more of an essentialist, like an essential term of you're gay or you're straight or bisexual, like something that speaks more to your sexuality. Where I would say queer is more an aesthetic, like I look at queer literature, which could mean everything from an author who doesn't define themselves as LGBT, but maybe there's a character who has interesting desire. So like that's a queer theme. Or maybe it's an ancient Greek text like the Odyssey,
Yeah.
where like being gay wasn't even around as a historical concept, but you could like call it a queer text. Yeah, so hopefully that helps explain a little.
Is is
Mhm.
there from what you're saying, I sense that there's also a bit of an ideological component to that term. Can you maybe speak to that briefly?
Yes. So what I really love is um, in Maxim Eristavi's
Mm-hmm.
Ukrainian queerness, when Maxim brings up that there's like this anti-colonial connection to being queer or to having a queer identity. And I would say that like in the academic writing, queer ideology is also connected to like feminist concerns, um, racial justice, definitely, not supporting anything that's authoritarian in its existence. So like that's why I thought his starting out with his essay was so important because it helped me understand like when he said that coming out as Ukrainian was actually more difficult than coming out as queer. Like unpacking that kind of the Russian propaganda that
Yeah.
he discusses with like what Anya was talking about, these policies going against the LGBT community, a lot of it was also it's tied to Russian propaganda.
Mhm.
Um, so yes, but queer as an ideology definitely is connected to a lot of justice for um, racial and oppressed communities.
So what I'm hearing is that it's a word and a concept and a feeling and a kind of a movement that really goes beyond just people who are gay in its embrace of social justice, equality, sort of, the good fight, good
Mhm.
trouble, as Congressman Lewis used to say.
Yeah.
So it's much wider, but it is sort of driven by gayness.
Yes, yes.
Did
So
I
like a
get it
good
right?
yes, a good
Okay.
example is like in New York there was and in DC, I think all over the country in the 80s with the AIDS crisis, there was the organization ACT UP, which is still going on, but like asking politicians to well, demanding that they pass laws and help support those who were not getting adequate medical treatment or
Mhm.
were being denied access to their partner who was suffering from AIDS and um, just making sure that there was equal treatment. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of organizations that there's friends of mine who call themselves queer, but are with someone of the opposite sex. But like their ideology matches more of a
Mhm.
queer um, aesthetic, or they believe in the empowerment of the LGBT people. Yeah.
And just one last question about this word. Do you think that it's do you think that this word is going to stay with us, or will it also fall out of fashion, let's say 10 or 20 years hence, and something else will replace it? I mean, with a large degree of sort of academic guns behind it, as a theory, as a concept, as a kind of philosophy almost. I can imagine that it will survive. It will not go the way of other sort of isms or what have you. What do you think?
That's such a good question. Well, I think that I think it will stay in language. I think that it's interesting how the general public is now using queer to talk about artwork specifically, not not about identity. I mean, I don't really hear a lot of people just like assume like, oh, that person is queer, or I don't think it's being used in that
Yeah,
way, but I think it's being used in like the Oscars, Broadway, definitely. Like I'm about to see the new Cats Jellicle Ball. Like I think people are calling that queer art. So I think like in terms of describing categories, it's going to exist. But I still think we're going to use gay,
hmm,
straight, bisexual, like I lesbian. I think that those words have existed longer in the way
yeah,
that they mean because they're
yeah.
about identity.
Yeah, I sometimes feel, and I sometimes feel that it's almost like it's the buzzword of the moment. Do you know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
I see it used sometimes, maybe even a little bit too much. So it's kind of like, the slang word of the moment kind of a thing. But well, we'll see. Time will tell, right? Yeah,
Yeah, and I think it's like there could be a similar um like when I just taught a queer studies course, um we like went into the whole history of like when homosexuality like is the first word to really originate in the 1880s, 1890s to talk about sexual identity. But I think that what's interesting is you don't hear homosexual as much as you hear gay. But
yeah,
like that took like decades. And I'm not saying not to call, like, I think homosexual is very medical in the language compared to gay. But I'm not saying you can't call someone that. Again, I think it depends on the comfortability of the person. Just like some people don't want to be called queer who are older just
Mhm.
because of the way that they were called that as an insult. I didn't have that
yeah,
experience because of my generation. Um, like I would say the word like the slur towards a queer person is more jarring to me than queer just because of like how I grew up. Um, but yeah, feminist I know has gone through, there's some people who resist who support the equality of women but don't want to be called a feminist. And like that's something I'm eager to get into with my students because I'm teaching a gender study course in the fall because um, it's very interesting how some of these political identity terms, uh, people will believe in those causes, but they just don't. These words start to take on very charged meanings, and sometimes
yeah.
people have they misunderstand what the word means, you
Can
know.
I just ask
Yeah.
one other thing about this particular word? So, the English language is it's like a rapid reaction force. It creates new terms very, very quickly, particularly sort of in the in software and IT and things like that, where all kinds of new concepts arise. English is very pliable and very good at coming up with new words. Now, many countries ape English, and they take English terms and turn them into something of their own. And I just quickly Googled queer using the Cyrillic alphabet, and and got a whole bunch of links and explanations and so forth and so on. So, you know, from this precursory preliminary search, I can see that queer as a term has become a Ukrainian term, queer.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, queer was once a derogatory term. And in Ukrainian, we also have derogatory terms that were labeled at the gay community. So I'm kind of curious. I wonder why other languages don't come up with their own words for these, you know, their own sort of alternative, linguistic alternative to the word queer, whether it's like, for example, in German, a, a kind of a street word for gay was schwul, which means warm. And but I think that they also have embraced the word queer in academia. So, I mean, that's just, I guess that speaks more to kind of English linguistic hegemony than to anything else. So, never
No,
mind.
yeah, I think that's such a great transnational question. I think
Mm,
it's the way that academic communities exist around the globe. But yeah, I mean, in Spanish, like I definitely like I know the term
hmm
um for a queer person, but it's like the slur, but at the same time, if you're doing like academic work, like there's queer Latino studies. Yeah. I feel like queer
hmm
has kind of, you're right, it's been adopted across the
Yeah.
globe. Um, and yeah, maybe that's, I don't know if that's if that brings us all to, does that bring us more together to have a common term? Um, I thought like that was interesting with each of these authors because I thought like each author in the book, they all have very different identity, like ways to identify.
Yeah.
So like even though they're like unified, their lived experience is very different. Like from being a trans person to being someone who is a gay man, like the spectrum of their experience is very diverse,
Yeah.
or even where they live, right? Like I was really surprised when I read that piece about the person who was like in Philadelphia and then like kind of the way that like they still um just viewed their Ukrainian heritage from different locations.
Yeah, that was an interesting essay because it reflected so much, not just about the guy's Ukrainian heritage, which had up until I think the war been largely a Russian uh, language heritage, even though he came from physical Ukraine. But it also, I mean, what I thought was also interesting about that particular piece is it goes through several prisms. It goes through a gay prism. It also goes through a Jewish prism, and it also goes through a Ukrainian prism. And you know these different layers of identity that this person carries. Some of the pieces, particularly some of the poems, you could not really you can't say that this is a gay or queer piece of writing. It's just about emotion. It's about love. It's about longing. It's about sadness. You know, so why
Yeah, the
should
anxiety of
yeah,
like
yeah,
what's it,
and these
Marichika?
Marichka.
Thank you.
yeah,
Uh my very American pronunciation of it. But yeah, like even the anxiety of I found the poems really spoke to wartime crises of like um hearing the sirens, like trying to still have desire for the person you love. Like I remember there was that one poem where, right, like he's trying to remember, like he's desiring his lover, but at the same time doesn't know if he can plan for the future.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, I thought it was great that there's different literary genres. Like I liked that it wasn't all essays, because I think like then it would have been too academic. Even though I really appreciated that like trans historical essay that when I mean, because I didn't know how much Ukrainian it's like ancient history is really rooted in Mediterranean. I mean, I guess I should
Yes.
have realized, but like how much of the Greek mythology and just like how, it really does unite so many um cultures,
Hmm.
that type of history. Because it's like my ancestors who are Italian, that's the same history as the Greek, you know, the colonies.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I I do want to talk about something else. So the book touches on the idea of a chosen family. And Maxim Eristavi, he says here, I cannot relate more to the chosen family experience. It is remarkable how this sentiment has become part of the anti-colonial solidarity around Ukraine. And my question to you, not it's not going to be just one question. So how do you understand like this term chosen family? And also, since you teach, do you talk about it with your students? And does for have you seen the same experience in your life or maybe in lives of people that you know well?
Yeah. I mean, chosen family is so important to the LGBT community. And I would just say anyone who um has sadly either not been accepted by family, um, maybe emancipated themselves. I'm thinking of there's an amazing documentary called Paris is Burning,
Hmm.
which shows chosen family in a really great way in the 1980s in New York City. The ballroom culture, like voguing, like how Madonna's song Vogue, that's all the LGBT community and people of color who were like voguing in these ballroom underground scenes. And their chosen family was arranged by houses. Like you would live with like a
Hmm.
house mother and like you'd be the house of uh kind of like fashion houses.
Okay.
So they mirrored it like a fashion house. So like instead of Dior, it would be like the queer ballroom mother
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
her house. So the TV show Pose shows that too. In my own life, I mean, thankfully I had a very supportive family, so not necessarily in that like out of necessity finding chosen family, but I do think that coming out and like already kind of going against certain expectations of like being a cis man and like what that means. My friends are very, very strong in my life.
Hmm.
And being an only child, I think also kind of had me think about friends in a way where they are family. So yeah, but so many of my friends who are part of the LGBT community, like they sometimes they consider their friends closer than cousins,
Hmm.
or they are cousins to them. Like they'll even like refer to them as cousins, or aunts or uncles. So I think it's really important, and I think that um, it's actually something that you don't have to be queer to embrace a chosen family. And if anything, I think it's very healthy to realize that just because you have blood relatives doesn't mean they can mistreat you or that it's good to have boundaries. And I think like, I think a lot of us probably are closer to friends than some of our family members. And that's okay. Like, I think if anything, it helps us expand like, our tree
Hmm.
of support. Yeah.
Following up on this question, so you've mentioned that a chosen family could be kind of a refuge for people who are not accepted. I do have a question about being tolerated and being accepted. What is the difference between these two terms?
Mm.
I'd
Okay.
rather be accepted than tolerated.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. So, like, tolerated is you'll be at a distance, but like, I'll still be in the same room as you.
Hmm.
Mm.
Accepted is like, you are who you are, and I'm gonna form a genuine bond with you. Yeah.
So it's not
So,
because it is dictated like by social norms, for example, but because like I truly
yeah,
appreciate you as a
yeah,
person, like
yeah.
as who you
Like I
are.
see you as a human. Like I
Hmm
see you in your agency.
hmm
Um, yes, not just you're right. Not just because I know that the good thing to do is to be nice to LGBT
hmm
people or, to women,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah. We're not
there's,
like it's not only limited to LGBTQ
oh
people.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think we see that a lot too with like this quote. I loved the again, a lot of this is from the opening essay, but it is not surprising that the rapid expansion of human rights equality and queer visibility in Ukraine coincided with a broad decolonial awakening. Like, so also with the chosen family idea, I think especially because it's America's 250th anniversary, I keep trying to get as much material about the indigenous community of
Hmm
America because I think that the Native American history is not taught as much as it should be. And I think that the indigenous communities in America showed a lot about chosen family. All
hmm
indigenous communities. I mean, um, Ukrainian, I'm sure, the indigenous culture, that idea of your community is family, right? And it's not just like who you're
Related to?
blood related to, but you're, who's gonna help out their neighbors, who's gonna, get food for others, like being part of this cultural system of support. To me, that is the chosen family
Hmm
idea. It's it's an ancient system of support.
Following up on that chosen family, I want to briefly mention an essay that doesn't really have an author. It's called "Good Vampire." It's a very short one. It's
Oh
only
yeah.
only 2 pages, but it is quite evocative and powerful in its shortness, brevity, and simplicity. And here's a paragraph that I think talks about how you choose your family, but then modern technology and online space give
Mm,
us a new way of having this extended family. And he says, I'm afraid of men. No, no, not exactly. It's the aggression that scares me. So, in avoiding eye contact, I'm hoping to avoid physical or emotional violence. That's why I've entered online spaces. This way, I can't see a face, a feeling, but I can project the illusion of real communication onto replicas and so forth. So I think that it's great that people have that, perhaps at a time of war where just going out, leading normal lives is dangerous because you don't know where the bombs will come flying from. When the Shahid drones will descend upon your head and so forth and so on. This online family gives you one a sense of family, a sense of belonging, um, a sense of community, but also it gives you safety. You can go into a bunker and be with your online family.
yeah. No, I highlighted that too. I was
Mm,
showing Anya. Yeah, I mean, even like that statement about Good Vampire saying, like, I'm afraid of the aggression.
yeah,
I think that also like shows the way that like even in the queer community, there is also how misogyny can affect queer men too. Like that idea of toxic masculinity, that
hmm
if men don't feel comfortable being emotional and in touch with their feelings, that hurts everyone. Like that's why I would always say that feminism and queer studies are connected. Like sometimes they'll say, being a feminist or wanting the empowerment of women helps men with their accessing their interior emotions.
So,
And, because sometimes there's that myth that, being a feminist means you're against men, which
yeah,
is just very untrue. But, like men who unfortunately don't report abuse in the same way, or, thinking that they have to have this exterior where they can't cry. I think all of that is part of this too. And I think you're right. Um, there's these parasocial relationships are definitely important and are a network. I still think though, at the end of the day, like what we're doing right now, even um, having access to talk to someone, even if it's on a Zoom screen,
Mhm.
is more helpful in feeling belonging than like just seeing someone's video and liking it. Like I think that's a good start, but I think you have to still, if you can make a connection with others to talk to them, it really helps your self-esteem.
Mhm.
I'm not a psychologist, but I would assume it would definitely help your self-esteem by, even if someone isn't in um your Ukrainian town, for example, if you know that they're in Ukraine and you can like have a conversation with them, I'm sure that visibility, like it's why it's exciting to see what's going on in Kyiv with the right, like the Pride Parade, like trying to have more of that visibility. And even like I'm curious, um, is there a connection with um, having Zelensky like with his entertainment background? It seems like he's pretty open
About what?
to the LGBT community. Like even with like being Jewish too. Like I'm sure like he understands the intersection of oppression, like because of his background. But I'm not sure because I don't know enough of his
Well, he
history.
coming from the entertainment sector, which is almost by definition a lot more open and accepting than other fields.
Traditional.
He, I would assume, you know, Zelensky in his create before he did this series called Servant of the People, he was the lead performer and in this 95 Kvartal, this comedy show that stemmed from these college competitions that they used to have in the Soviet Union, sort of comedic college competitions, and many of the shows that they did were very, very, very anti-Ukrainian. Just notoriously anti-Ukrainian. They were, I would call them.
Diminishing,
Hmm?
yeah, very diminishing, very
Yes, insulting
elite
and
and insulting, yeah.
insulting to previous Ukrainian presidents and so forth. Very. I don't remember any homophobic episodes, and I know
Me
I
neither.
know a lot of. They're probably. I don't know, Anya. Maybe you remember. I don't remember. I used to see this show on and off because my mother had
I
the
used to watch
entire
it. Yeah, I
plethora of
used to watch it.
Ukrainian programs. Hmm?
I used to watch it. I
Yeah,
used to watch it too, but as you said, I don't have any recollection of any
yeah, yeah.
homophobic episodes. Yeah. Is it
Yeah,
on
and I believe
SNL?
I'm not sure if it's in this book, but
SNL.
Zelensky is on record as defending gay rights, as defending same-sex marriage and that sort of stuff. He at least by these the few open public statements that he has made, he is just normal open-minded person who doesn't who looks at people as individuals and wants them all to have the same kind of rights. But if we could go back to the book for 1 second, I wanted to the essay by Ernest Hook, which is called the Emancipation of Ernie, I found to be very interesting and kind of funny because we see this transformation of a guy who is who's kind of sort of very Russian centered. Everything that's Russian is cool, and he calls himself. He says, "I became primarily a miserable Russian-speaking snob, although I am from a Ukrainian-speaking family, fetishizing Soviet-era modernism." and thus criticizing decommunization. I spent all my money on Russian books, blah, 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 listen to Russian podcasts and so forth and so on. And the list can go on and on and on and on. And then he becomes Ukrainian. He wakes up. But he mentions and he says something that I also think is really, really interesting, and it speaks to Ukrainian-Russian relations and how Ukrainians can be pro-Russian, but the Russians are never pro-Ukrainian. And he says, we naively rooted for liberal Russia. Did it enthusiastically root for us? No, it did not, and it still doesn't. That's on page 66. But higher up on page 66, he uses the term homo nationalism, and that term is used a couple of times. And I was I was kind of I was taken by that term, because I think that perhaps the average American, or maybe the average Ukrainian who perhaps is not super exposed to the gay community, perhaps doesn't have many friends, may sometimes feel that some of the behaviors are perhaps too much in your face for them. Do you know what I mean? And they will maybe look at this as some sort of homo nationalism. Can you explain this term? Is it like, is it a good nationalism? Is it a bad nationalism? I mean, what does it really mean? Because we are first and foremost human beings. I'm not first and foremost, a straight woman or a Ukrainian woman or whatever. I mean, on this hierarchy of my definitions, I am first a human, and how should I think about this term?
Yeah. So I looked it up just because I want to. It's a very heavy term.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it comes from a theorist, Jasper Puar,
Mm-hmm.
who in 2007 uses it to critique US politics post 9/11. So it is a term that means how nations, political groups, or states embrace LGBTQ rights to reinforce racist or nationalist, xenophobic ideologies. So, like, an example is uh, Israel saying that they're the most LGBTQ plus um, supportive country, like by pointing to Tel Aviv, while at the same time denying the atrocities that they commit to the Palestinian people. Or that like there's trying to use LGBTQ rights, if a country does that as a way to distract from their um colonial practices of oppression, is like what the term means. So I would say, like, in the case of Ukraine, um like what is happening here, I think this is very interesting too, because like I highlighted in this essay that when he moved out of his small conservative hometown, like he didn't realize he was gay until he went to Kiev to study his sociology degree. So, like, I wonder, in a way, like, is this kind of feeding the stereotype that when you go to college, um, like, I know there's some who will say that colleges indoctrinate you into like being gay. But even though he's saying he was always attracted to guys, it seems like
Yeah.
for him, college gave him the language to
And the freedom.
his
Yeah.
freedom and to understand his sexuality. And I know, like we've discussed, um like any small hometown is going to be very different than a city center. Um right, because like how many people are in Kiev?
Well, prior to the war, it was over 3 million.
Yeah. Yeah, so very large, dense.
Mm-hmm.
city. Yeah, I mean, I think like what I was also curious about is what was that because I don't know the historical context. Those two slogans that he heard during the Pride Parade. Um that there was like glory to the nation, death to enemies, but then there was also death to the nation, queer to enemies. Uh,
Yeah.
like I didn't on page 65, I um like was one more pro-Ukrainian and the other was more pro-Russian or like, what was the context of
Um,
the phrase?
Oh, so in Ukraine, we do have our national, it's the, what do you call that era? Um, Слава Україні, героям слава.
yeah.
What do
Yeah.
you
And
call that?
it's a slogan,
It's
basically,
it's a
it's a
slogan,
slogan.
and
Yeah.
we have a phrase in Ukrainian, Slava Nazi, which is glory to the nation, і смерть ворогам, death to enemies. So these two phrases, they come directly from the national slogan.
Mm.
But like death to the nation, queer to enemies, this is something that I'm not really, yeah, familiar with, and I don't think I can explain what the author means here.
Yeah. I also don't know it. I've never heard it. So I mean, part of me wanted to see some humor in it, but I don't understand what it's supposed to mean. And the way he writes
I mean,
about it is
here's what it
also
says.
quite uh
I didn't know if it
it's
was like a critique of
yeah. Mm-hmm.
like oh, there's a comment. Um
Okay, motto. Yeah, national motto. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I also didn't know if he was like saying that there were people critiquing um the LGBT presence in the military or like because I know sometimes in America there is like this notion of the homo nationalism
Yeah.
of uh there being in the queer community a divide over um like which policies are being advocated for. So like sometimes like there were critiques that same-sex marriage was prioritized over like queer homeless people, for example, or the transgender community not having access to health services.
Hmm.
So like sometimes the LGBT people caring more, who have more privilege, caring more about those policies that affect them. I think, like in any country, like caring more about tax policies in marriage than about those who are more lower or working class people who are queer, if that makes sense. Like, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's exactly what's happening here, even though I did find it really fascinating. Like, is it really well known that there was a lot of queer Ukrainians who entered the military, um, like because of the fight for sovereignty, like that they connected their queer identity to the sovereignty of the Ukrainian people.
To the national
Well,
identity.
Yeah.
going back to the first essay, which I think we all agree is quite powerful, Maxim Eristavi's essay, where he where he posits his gayness on the same level as his Ukrainianness, and that recognition of one is recognition of the other, and that they are both, on equal par in terms of his self, his identity, and his being, and how it took one to kind of to bring forth the other. And that they go hand in hand. And in this particular essay, um, he presents being Ukrainian and being queer as things that are, on par in terms of being persecuted. And I think that I was especially struck by how he tied the two concepts together and how he sees that you can't have one without the other, at least for him, you know.
Yeah, and also like this section on page 14 about like I thought it was so powerful how to be homophobic as a Ukrainian also meant that you were kind of backing the Russian power.
Yeah,
So, like how homophobia can also be connected to like the Russian propaganda, like supporting Russian propaganda, which I mean, um, I guess like I was naive thinking, oh, everyone in Ukraine supports Ukrainian identity. But apparently, like, are there still people who actually support, forgive
yes,
me also if I'm opening up a can of worms here, but
no,
like
yeah, no, yeah,
support,
yes,
like,
yes, yes, there
There
are.
are.
Every day, Ukrainians um, arrest people who are sending positions of Ukrainian military
Operating with
locations to the
Russian
enemy
military
and
or
these kinds
Russian
of things.
government.
So, the Russians never sleep. They're
wow.
very busy. They have a lot of money. They buy people, and we still have a lot of people in Ukraine who not a lot, but who long for the Soviet Empire when sausages were cheap, vodka was plentiful, and their pensions were larger. So it's like.
Well, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, even in America, with, Russia interfering and,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even, someone in our administration backing or helping the
Yeah,
Russian
exactly.
military.
And there, we have certainly, we can all think about several pro-Russian journalists who shall remain nameless, right? Who are parroting Kremlin talking points up the kazoo. And are they doing it because they love Russia, or are they doing it because they've signed a contract? So
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's.
yeah. Well, and even like I feel like throughout all of the essays in particular, that idea of like the attempts to criminalize um the queer community,
Mhm.
not only being backed or being part of Russian propaganda, like you're, talking about, but also how that propaganda um was it almost just seemed like also coordinated to like discredit liberal ideology, whatever they're identifying as.
Very much so. Very
Like
much so.
it really seems like also that kind of like questioning academics or questioning,
Hmm.
like sadly what we're seeing in America, questioning scientists or anything that like goes against like anyone who wants people to critically think and have like freedom of expression, discrediting that thought. Like,
Yeah.
just saying, oh, well, that's liberal ideology. And
One of the most outspoken people who made a big stink during the latest Pride Parade in Kyiv is a guy called Kurchinsky, Dmitro Kurchinsky. Dmitro Kurchinsky is a particularly um, distasteful character who's been around for a very, very long time. And he has always been on the right radical fringes of the political spectrum. And he lately has been parroting Russian Orthodox Church sort of talking points about the evils of homosexuality and so forth and so on. And he's the and the Russian Orthodox Church is very much against gayness. It's very much against any same-sex love. It's to them it's a cardinal sin. They have laws against
Even
against.
Ira, I'm sorry for interrupting. Even though we've heard of so many cases of child molesting under
Yeah.
by those like Russian Orthodox Church
Hmm.
priests and people who work there.
Yeah, so Russia is the today I was reading an article, I think in Reuters or something like that, about people who have moved to Russia because Russia is a country that has family values, Christian values, blah blah blah, and so forth and so on. So it's about 3,000 people from various countries have moved there, and most of them, some have returned, others are unhappy with the choices that they've made, and one of the things that the Russians propagate are these family values, and they've actually passed a law to encourage people to move to Russia, and they give you a visa for 3 years, and after 3 years, if you can take a test and pass a Russian language test and not a knowledge of the proper history, you might get Russian citizenship. So this
Wow.
kind of non-acceptance of anything other is what they call family values. Now, Russia, having said that, Russia has an extremely high abortion rate. They have an extremely high divorce rate. They have an
Have an
extremely
extremely
high
high rate of domestic abuse.
domestic violence. Most children are being raised in single mother households, so it is far from this ideal, Norman Rockwell kind of society. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'm sure, uh, this is myself speaking, but I'm sure that, Putin definitely has, uh, you know, cases of not, definitely violent. Well, I definitely think he has violent sociopathic tendencies. But
Oh, of course he does.
I think also this kind of control narrative of like anytime you hear about family values, it's also an attempt to maintain patriarchal
It makes you
authority.
Oh,
crazy.
absolutely,
Yeah, like they want to
absolutely.
control and the LGBT community um goes against that kind of traditionalist value of authority. And I think that, for any kind of authoritarian regime, the LGBT community is a threat because they're not going to,
Because they manifest love, acceptance,
yeah, empathy,
empathy.
things
Yeah, yeah,
that
absolutely.
authoritarians reject, which is empathy. And they definitely don't want people to think for themselves. So I thought that was very powerful in the essays about uh, that idea of like someone said like resistance,
Yeah, I
like
have
my
it somewhere.
queerness and my
I have
resistance
it here.
to authoritarianism are linked together. And I thought like that to me summed up the whole book in general was like how a battle for Ukrainian um identity and sovereignty is linked to their queerness. Like
Mm.
these are both connected. Um Politically.
Andrew, do you think that that's good, or do you think that that's just one of these uniquely Ukrainian situations and phenomenon?
Hmm.
I mean, like being
Yeah.
queer in America is not tied. It does not go hand in hand with you being an American, does it?
Hmm. I mean, I think that this year, I would say I think that pride is more and more now in America. There's a rejection of corporatism. So I would
Mm.
say, I think especially in New York City area, in the Northeast, there's a lot of like to celebrate Pride also means taking a stand against corporations that support um, this administration.
Mm-hmm.
And so like we've seen, you know, protests against Target, protests against Walmart. I mean, we could name so many corporations, Amazon, with Jeff Bezos. I think there's a lot of like there's been a lot of debate within the queer community in America about like what does it mean to be part of the community and what does it mean to back that up by
Yeah,
putting your dollar like putting your what is that saying about putting your money where your mouth is.
mouth is, yeah.
Yes. So I think that there definitely is much more of a political um urgency right now that I definitely don't think I saw like in years
In
past.
any previous administration. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, yeah.
At this point, I would like to open the floor to everyone who's listening right now. Please raise your hand if you want to make a comment, ask a question, or share something with us. All right,
Hi,
Tatiana.
hi, Tanya. Mhm.
Hi, hello everybody. I only want to share it a little bit my own reflection. Taras Gembik, I think so, the author of essay Queer Institution. From the first lines, he described how in space of Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw, it was special center, Słonecznik on Polish, sunflower, Soniasznik, anyway. It was special community center. They, Taras Gembik described, so they made 2,000-3,000 of sandwiches daily and delivered in different spaces. I remember most significant, of course, it was on the railway station in Warsaw and some metropolitan subway stations and near Ukrainian ambassador. And later, we didn't know, of course, later we knew about who prepared it. This is center organized different events, absolutely free events, workshops for children, some sort of book clubs for adults, and so they was so active, and we appreciate their help. It was absolutely amazing. Absolutely.
Th
So,
Thank you, Tatiana.
yeah,
Thank you for sharing.
yeah.
Anyone else? Don't be shy.
Valia,
Oh,
Olya, come
oh,
on, girl. Come on, ladies. What does New York think? What does California think?
yeah.
Are they there? Do you think they've turned the video off and they're, I don't know,
I don't know.
giving themselves manicures?
Uh,
Well, listen, we're going to put you back in the hot seat, Andrew, then, while our participants are thinking about possible
Yeah.
questions.
Um,
If what would you if you were to discuss this book with your students, which essay would you select?
Hmm. So I actually think I am going to use this essay.
Great.
I think I'm
Let
going
let us
to,
know how it goes.
yeah, I think I'm going to assign Ukrainian queerness just because I thought it's just a really good overview of understanding um giving a little historical background. So like
Mhm.
specifically like all the way from the 11th century of
That's Jana Liss. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And
Mhm. Yeah.
I really like the way that the anti-colonial discussion gets connected to understanding, which I think a lot of my students, a lot of American students don't really know a lot about Eastern European or Soviet history at all. That I think like not only would this help understand the perilous situation of the Ukrainians and understanding their um, what they're demanding for um, their sovereignty, but I also think it really helps understand that the global question about being queer. Like this isn't just something to like take them out of that Western idea. Because I do think things get really framed always from a Western perspective, and I really think it's important to have a non-Western perspective and a voice. So I thought that essay was really very strong and very good uh support in the footnotes. I thought there was a lot of really good essays
It's an
recommended.
academic research paper, basically.
It was,
Yeah.
it was. And actually, I think I might know some of the people who are in the footnotes, because I think she went to Stony Brook with me. I have to like look, because she was always writing about, oh yeah, no, it is her. Oh my goodness, that's so funny.
Who's her?
Alexandra, uh, she's finishing her PhD in women's gender and sexuality. Novitskaya. Okay. Yeah, she studied actually at St. Petersburg in philosophy, but I remember she wrote about homophobia in Russia. So yeah, she was always like writing and researching about um literally outing the homophobia in Soviet, or is it still Soviet Russia, post-Soviet Russia? I don't.
It's the Russian Federation now.
Oh, okay.
Russian
Well,
Federation,
the
yeah.
homophobia that exists in the
Yeah.
Russian Federation.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I thought that essay was really very, very interesting, and I appreciated, being a Christian, being a Ukrainian Catholic, I appreciated the biblical citations
mm,
that, sayings that are attributed to Jesus that are very open in terms of just acceptance. And I thought this concept of, I don't know quite how to pronounce it, Delphopoesis
oh, yes,
was
yes. The
was
brotherly
was
love.
Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah, the brotherly love, where you had the equivalent basically of a civil marriage of
Yeah.
Civil
people from the
partnership,
same,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, from the same gender, and church sanctified,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So,
yeah, and if you think of the priesthood, like in
mm,
general, the priesthood still really does have that brotherly, sisterly, right? The nuns, but
when it's practiced right.
yes, when it's practiced right, there is a real like uniting around like the philosophical
So
Mhm.
affection.
there's like no sexual component, right? Or
No,
is there? Okay.
I mean, I don't think
I think
traditionally
it's a
there.
platonic love.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah, like
yeah,
the Greek philosophers.
yeah.
Well, they
Hmm.
weren't all platonic, but
Yes, no, no, no,
I
exactly.
do love
That's the thing. Hmm.
I love the symposium. Like if you want to read a Greek
Hmm.
philosophical text, I think that really is interesting with sexuality.
Yeah, yeah, very
And
much so. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I also wanted
What?
to bring something up that I don't know if any of if you know about it, but this it's an interesting concept that exists in Albania, and it's about gender roles.
Hmm.
In Albania, there's something called burnesha. It means sworn virgins. And this is a centuries old tradition in isolated patriarchal regions of northern Albania, where biological women who are born as women, take an oath and they spend the rest of their life living as men.
Hmm.
And this happens, the practice is called kanun. And it's an ancient Albanian male law. And it often happens when a family has no male heir. So an existing daughter will take this oath. She becomes the male head of the household, inherits property, dresses for the rest of her life like a man, and does manly things. I mean, how
Hmm.
cool is that?
No, it is cool. And I mean, it's so counter to like that Joan of Arc. Like when they
Yeah.
mentioned the Joan of Arc example.
And
Yeah.
occasionally, occasionally women who yeah, yeah. So,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I have
mm,
I have a question, probably the final question of our today's discussion. Um,
And then can I ask one thing
yeah,
when you're done? Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So after you finish reading this anthology, was there like anything that helped you um expand your understanding of contemporary Ukraine, or even like help you challenge the assumptions that you might have had about Ukraine?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I knew this from you, Anna. Incredibly powerful, um, really empathetic people. I mean, again, this is like just generalizing from these essays, but really understanding that, I mean, I always thought what Russia's doing is an atrocity, but understanding more the urgency of like the Ukrainian fight for independence is tied to like also fight policies that negatively affect the queer community, but so many communities. Um, that really how um unfortunately we're seeing this rise in fascism across the globe. And there's so many people united against that fight. And like to me, the Ukrainian people showed the way forward to not allow our voices to be taken away from us. So yeah, I think this is a very, very important text and very accessible and short enough to like get a lot of information without
Very condensed
yeah, everything
events.
is done in a very powerful, it's impactful. Like
Yeah.
every word is impactful when I was reading. Yeah.
So we got a comment from Valentina Levitsky. She's saying, I don't have any questions today, but I'm incredibly grateful for this discussion. It gave me so much to think about and raised so many interesting points. Thank you very much, Vala, for sharing.
Oh, so the question I
Yes.
am curious about, from like Irina and your perspective,
Mhm.
and everyone who's here's
Yeah.
perspective, which is like if you came to America from Ukraine, was it difficult to understand the divisions between America's political system, like the Democratic and Republican parties, and how the LGBTQ community is aligning themselves more with the Democratic Party for the fight for like liberation and freedom? Like, is that similar to Ukraine, or does America's political system just seem completely, confusing?
Well, I'm still trying to figure it out. Personally, I do like the fact that in American society, um, American politicians and officials, they are very, um, I would say, subjected to the social opinion.
Mhm.
So if people want to see changes, um, they will make sure that the American politician and American political like entity system will hear them.
Mm. We'll
So
call their offices,
yes,
we'll make
yes,
videos,
yes.
protest.
So yeah, so you're making this whole process very um tangible, I would say, right? And well, I haven't lived in Ukraine since 2019. And again, like to be honest, I wasn't really much invested in the Ukrainian political life. at the time, right? But from what I can see now, the Ukrainian civil society is very active, very progressive, very straightforward, and very demanding. And like this is a good thing. And I think that the Ukrainian government uh, is learning to hear the Ukrainian society and make things that are demanded of them.
Hmm. Hmm.
It'll be interesting to hear an answer to your question from, for example, Olya, Valia, and Tanya, who are more recent arrivals to America. I mean, Lydia
Well,
was born in America, so her perceptions are probably quite different. But I'd love to hear what she has to say about it. I came to America as a child. I was 10 years old, and as soon as I became a naturalized citizen, I registered as a Democrat, and I've stayed a conservative man who's always been a Tory voter. He's he's uh, every reasonable person I know is profoundly unhappy with this current administration. The Democratic Party, and I wasn't particularly aware, although AIDS were were becoming an issue. It was the early days when the our artistic community was just beginning to be decimated by there was it wasn't as talked about and acceptable. It was then identified as, it's a homosexual disease. It was the language that was used in those days was not very nice and not very inclusive. But I found the Republican Party, um, even though I liked Reagan because all the Ukrainians liked Reagan because Reagan was against the Soviet Union, he was against communism, and he was for freedom of all of the countries that were enslaved by Russian Soviet communism. But I didn't like certain things that were prevalent in the Republican Party. For example, the moral majority. What the hell was that? A bunch of guys in Congress suddenly declared themselves to be the moral majority. By what right? By whose definition? These kinds of, we had Phyllis Schlafly, who became this powerhouse and that was anti-women, anti-feminism, anti-equal rights, and all of these things that were profoundly just, I didn't like these policies. I found them to be inhuman and hostile. And the other thing that also made me choose to be a Democrat was the politicization of women's bodies. When abortion was again and 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 continues to be a political issue, that really got my goat, because this is abort nobody has abortions because they have nothing better to do. Okay. Abortion is a personal issue. It's a personal issue that has to do with a woman and her body and her choices and the options that she has on the table. It is not a political issue. It should not be dictated by 90-year-old geezers who have never had a period. So that's
No,
that's why
absolutely.
that's why I continue to be a Democrat, even though it's a party that continues to shoot itself in the foot. So in very many ways,
Hmm.
but I do appreciate their support of sexual minorities and the issues that we're discussing today. Sometimes I think they could do it in a more delicate manner so as not to maybe insult sensibilities of people. And I think certain things they get carried away and they become ridiculous because really at the end of the day, who cares what bathroom people use to go to do their business? Really, I think we just get carried away with certain things. While the intention is good, we want to help people, we want to equalize the situation, but the way
Well,
we
and
go
these
about it
bathroom,
sometimes.
yeah, and these bathroom bills that um you would think would target the trans community,
Mm,
it actually has ended up where women who um I don't know, are sporty or like more tomboyish have
Mm,
been targeted by um like there was just an example um where it's usually actually um it makes everyone unsafe in that situation, like
mm.
by trying to police who's using a bathroom.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there was actually a father who just took his little girl into a women's bathroom, and there's a video of it, and a man questioned him while he's in the women's bathroom, saying, "My wife was in this bathroom. Why is your daughter? Why are you in here with your daughter?" And he's like,
Mm,
"Where did you want me to
yeah.
take her into the men's bathroom?" Like it's just yeah. At the end of the
No, it's
day,
it's
I just think people need to mind their business
it's
and be
absurd. Yeah.
respectful.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I
Um,
do agree. I think sometimes Americans, there is like there can be the tendency of everyone thinks they have an opinion and it needs to be expressed,
Hmm.
which is why I respect Anya for like being very systematic because not everyone needs to express everything. Yeah.
Ola, I think you want to
Yes,
say something.
um, just like follow up on Irena. So I'm probably in the middle somewhere time-wise between Anna and Irena. I've been here for 26 years. So I'm still independent who just recently started registering as a Democrat just to vote to express position towards everything that happens in Ukraine and the Congress inability to take action. But this is not what I wanted to mention. So I been listening to you so through the whole time today, and I've been thinking about somewhat paradoxical difference between Ukraine and United States in relationship to things. Queer, all sort of queer. So we are at war in Ukraine right now, right? And many people in the military, they are openly, I mean, so just declaring themselves as queer. So they will be going in the unicorns and a military uniform. And at the same time, Ukraine is still lagging in legislature to protect them. I don't think, I mean, so we are still allowed we allow same-sex marriages in Ukraine, so don't think we are still there. And in contrast, I mean, so here in the United States, you have all the legal protection, right? But still, I mean, so people in the military, they don't really advertised a lot their position. So some take extent, but there is like very almost to the opposite, right? I mean, so paradoxical mismatch between some sort of military culture. I'm not sure how to say it, right? And
Particularly under the current
yes, and the
secretary.
support from the
Hmm.
state. And what is actually, I mean, so is allowed, legal side.
Mm.
Mm.
I wonder what you think about it.
Well, no, first, thank you for all of that, Olga. Yeah, so I mean, it's so interesting because you're right. There's so many legal protections, thankfully. I mean, they keep trying to threaten that the Supreme Court might be taking up same-sex marriage to reverse, the way they did with Roe v. Wade,
Hmm.
um, which I still can't believe we don't have Roe v. Wade protections. Um, but with the military in America, I think. Ugh, it's so I mean, I think like what the Queer Ukraine book, the essays really showed too was how much imperialism, and I think American imperialism specifically, um,
Oh, this is
America,
interesting. Yeah, that's
yes,
an interesting. I mean, take. I mean, to go to take it where I mean, so.
yeah. I think American imperialism is so tied to patriarchy that there is a lot of still closetedness in the military. I mean, my cousins were in the army, in the special forces, and now retired, but they even talked to me because I asked them about sexuality in the military, and they were like really under don't ask, don't tell So it
Hmm.
kind of still is like that in a way, even though there isn't don't ask, don't tell. It's kind of just like you're not supposed to really pry into each other's personal business unless someone talks about it. And even um the American military is really not supposed to give their political opinion. Um, Even though I think they could, yeah, I don't, it's just such a yeah, I think it's why there's so much division right now. Um, where like you're even seeing um some communities in America really doing a lot for the 250th anniversary. And some people are trying to like use the 250th anniversary as a show of patriotism and even going so far as like your loyalty to America means you're loyal to the current president. And that means you support, like you're going to go to these events. So they're even making these events into um, a pro-Trump rally. And like that's my uncomfortability is like we should be able to celebrate, but like celebrate, you can also celebrate and critique American imperialism. And I mean, what's going on right now with Iran and the Iranian war, which, you know, so many
Is
military,
on again, off again, right?
yeah, on again, off again, the school children who were killed, which was horrible, soldiers who've been killed, but then like declaring surrender. It's
Mm.
yeah, a war at um like why was this war? I mean, why are wars happening in general? But why was this war even allowed to go on and like um like shouldn't we be critiquing America's intervention into these like well giving money? I mean, we're seeing right now the fight to protest politicians who are still giving money um, to Israel, even with what's going on. Yeah, I think that I mean I will say I appreciate the ability like that we can protest, and that's a very protected, even though they've tried to, you know, arrest protesters in America. I think at the end of the day um, freedom to protest is so valued and freedom to critique the government is so American. I don't I don't discount that there's also groups in like there are people in America who wish that their view was the only one that was allowed to be spoken. And I think that's the fight right now is there are people who can't believe that others aren't just like backing and supporting whatever the administration says. But
Hmm.
I don't think they're in the majority. Like, in my opinion, the majority is not backing the current administration. And I think we're like seeing, and we'll continue to see in November, like there's protests going on with the voting. And, you know, my hope is, uh, that we continue to have freedom of expression because, and I know like in Ukraine, right, you can protest the government and
Yep, under the martial law.
Ukrainians do it all the time. They even
yeah,
topple it every now and then. So
yeah, yeah. But like in Russia, if you protest
that's
Putin,
it. You get a one-way ticket to the gulag.
yeah, and that
So,
just destroys any kind of argument.
yeah,
Mhm.
I think, I mean, this like notions that you mentioned earlier that queerness is anti-imperialistic in nature. There is something to it. The other thing I was like was on my mind as I was listening to you that United States and Ukraine are different in a way that Ukraine is more I would say, monotheistic in a way. So we have majority of population would be Christians and like Slavic Christians, Orthodox Christians, and also, don't, I'm sorry, this. And also, they would be uh, culturally the same, so not only in religion. And United States seems to be a melting pot. And when you're just trying to add a little bit to this melting pot, there is a huge reaction to it. It seems like each new minority, first it was religious minorities, and then cultural, and now it seems to be minorities in self-expression. It really needs to fight, I mean, so to take a seat at the table. And this is kind of interesting. Then in a monotheistic country, it seems to be that all these people, I mean, so right, queer people, they were able to get themselves accepted much easier. So,
Mm.
and this is again surprising because in Ukraine, we have this communal feeling and thinking. So,
Mhm.
like, our culture was a rule. I mean, so Ukrainians historically were not allowed to live in the cities by empires. So like living in a small village, you will really adhering to the laws, I mean, imposed on you and the community. And with all this history, it seems like the transition to the queerness and queerness fear freedom in Ukraine is going smooth. I'm just wondering, maybe just because the state institutions are weakened by the war and it's not on the mind of everyone, and that's why the social change is happening so easily.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's powerful. And I don't know. I always think the more like, especially like in my own family, the family members who live in more diverse areas in America, like culturally diverse, racially diverse, religiously diverse. Um, a lot of Americans are atheists or agnostic, like don't necessarily identify as a religion. But I think like the more diverse an area, the more growth happens. Like that's just statistic. Like, you know, even me having a conversation now with you all, I think like it's so important to bring these communities together because, it just challenges our minds. It challenges us to see each other as people.
And it's enriching, it's personally enriching, and on a community level, it's enriching. It makes, what's the point of living in a black and white world when you can live in a colored one?
Well, exactly. Yeah, I don't understand what the appeal would be that everyone thinks and acts the same. I think that just sounds,
Yeah.
that's a nightmare,
Boring,
in my
boring,
opinion.
right? It's boring.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
it's
to
quite
me.
convenient in an authoritarian society,
Yeah, it's
right?
Well, obviously, yeah.
1984.
Before.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, which I'll have to do for like
I read
a
it.
book club
I
soon.
read it. So
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. Well, this is what, thank you so much again
Yeah,
for
I
being here.
I think we can close this discussion out.
Mhm.
I think it's been really thoughtful and fruitful. So next month we're taking a short summer break and we will be back on August 29th with our next selection, which is National Tribune Legacy of Liberated Nations: The Life and Ideas of Ivan Vovchuk by Oleg Protsenko. So it's a long read, so we're
It's a
giving
heavy duty book, so start
yeah,
now.
so we're giving everyone extra time to read it over the summer. And hopefully we'll see you back at the end of August. So enjoy your weekend and have a good summer.
Yes.
And we'll be back very soon before you know it.
Yes,
Bye, everybody.
Yes, so
thank
much.
you,
Thank you.
everybody, and Andrew, thank you for the names. I've written them down, and look them up. Judith Butler
Yes.
and David Halperin. I'm looking
Oh, I'm
forward to
so
reading stuff
glad.
by them.
Okay.
Great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank
Bye,
Bye
you.
bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.